These are both Spyderco Enduras. It's a V-Toku2 Sprint Run and the exclusive, the Mass Drop exclusive in Supergold or Supergold2 SG2. The first one to come out was the V-Toku2 model. I knew that this was coming and I was excited about it coming out. Looking at the steel's composition, you're talking 1 to maybe a little bit above 1% carbon, very small amount of chromium, as high as 0.3, tungsten at 1 to 1.5%, and a very, very small amount of vanadium. But what was significant about it was that the working hardness was up to 64. So I was interested in that aspect of it. I was hoping that it would remind me of maybe Super Blue, something in that direction. Something that's significant about the steel is that it's, when they make it, they use Swedish iron ore to make it. So the impurity, the amount of impurities in it is very, very low. It was something that I picked up on when I sharpened it the first time. It doesn't have any carbide content in it that's going to challenge something like luminous stones. So I figured, why not just polish the edge and run it that way, same way I would ZDP. And that's what I did. And the edge that came up was so fine. It really seemed to stand out. I was hoping that it would hold some degree of bite, or that high level of sharpness on the edge for an extended period of time. But shortly after getting it and sharpening it and being very, very happy with the initial sharpening, what I found was, at least for me in the beginning, it didn't seem to hold a very high level of sharpness. The bite seemed to go away very quickly. Doesn't mean the knife wasn't functional. Doesn't mean that you couldn't keep using it in an EDC roll. Just that high level of bite on the edge where you touch it and it kind of bites into your finger, that seemed to go very fast. SG2 or Supergold2 is, both steels are made by Takafu in Japan. SG2 is a powdered metallurgy steel, higher alloy content. So as opposed to V-Toku2, the carbon is 1.25 to 1.45. The chromium is 14 to 16%. A little bit of manganese. The moly is 2.3 to 3.3, and vanadium is 1.8 to 2.2. Now, these values that I'm giving, that's what I've read. As far as the steels are concerned, Takafu gives the values for V-Toku2. They don't give the values for SG2. So this is what I've read, best I can come up with. And as far as the working hardness goes of SG2, Takafu says 62. I've read 64. So, I mean, take that into consideration as well. I'm not sure what the knives are Rockwell at. Both of them are laminated blades, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the Supergold, because it's not a weak steel. You don't need it on there for toughness, and at 14 to 16% chromium, your corrosion resistance is going to be very good. So I'm not sure why they bothered to laminate the blade, but they did. I wasn't sure if I was going to pick up the Supergold model. I'm not real big on mass drop and the idea of ordering something and waiting 6 months. When these came out, I had a fella contact me who had gotten one from a collector early on, and he said, are you interested in the Endura? And I said, yeah. So, and even leading up to that, I wasn't sure if I was going to get it. I was talking to Big Brown Bear, and he was asking me if I was going to get it, and I was saying, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know about how the gold's going to be in the model and everything. And we were discussing the steel. I think that Big Brown Bear had used it before, and he said, it's a sharpener steel. It's a steel that, he said, when I've used it in the past, it's a steel that wants to be sharp. So that piqued my interest. I mean, that caught my attention. And then looking at the composition and figuring, I mean, I think at that time, only given the research I had done, and I had only seen 64 as the working hardness. So 62, 63, 64 is as far as the Rockwell is concerned, and enough carbide content, moly as high as 3.3, vanadium as high as 2.2, and you're talking 1.25 to 1.45 carbon. That seems like a pretty good deal. I mean, I was excited about it with those things in consideration. I went ahead and bought the model from the fellow that I know, and in getting it, I was very happy with it. Now, mind you, I had a chance to check it out before ordering it. He was sending me pictures and everything else, so I knew that I was getting a decent one. I sharpened it up and I carried it. I think I used diamond just to straighten out the bevel, just to lay the groundwork for carrying the model. But the edge came up really nice. It had a lot of bite to it, and I was really pleased with it. And I carried it and used it quite a bit. Used it until the knife was no longer hair-shaven sharp. I figured I wanted to speak on Supergold because I was really pleased with it. In fact, I was so pleased with this model that Mass Drop put up another offering where you could buy another one and you didn't have to wait. And I went ahead and ordered a second one. Now, that second one that I ordered wasn't quite as pristine as this one. The grind was a little bit off. But that is what it is. Something that Spyderco seems to be having trouble with these days, which they should really fix. There's been too many knives come out recently where the whole knife is done right and then the grind is crooked. But it is what it is. I'll take care of it. I just got that other, I bought that other Supergold in Dura because I was so happy with the model. I like the way the steel performs, and this one, and really the other one as well, is put together so well and executed so well that I was really, really pleased with it. The gold backspacer on there is the only thing that's gold. I think I saw a picture of these when they were first being talked about, when they were first being announced, and everything that was steel except for the blade was gold. I think I saw a picture where that was the case, and it just didn't look good. I really wasn't sure if I was going to go for it, but in getting the knife, just the backspacer is gold, and it's not a color. The way it was executed doesn't put me off to the knife. After this knife went dull, I immediately jumped to the V-Toku2 model in carry, just because I wanted to have another Endura in my pocket. I had gotten really comfortable carrying the Supergold Endura, and I carried this V-Toku2 until I wore it down to dull. In the midst of all this, maybe this was leading up to getting the Supergold Endura, I picked up a new ZDP 189 Endura. I had been meaning to get one for a long time, and I reached out to theknifejoker.com, and I talked with them, and I went ahead and ended up picking up an Endura from them. Very pleased with it, very happy with the grind, very happy with the execution. Sharpened it up, carried it, sharpened it several times. I mean, in fact, at this point, I've sharpened this probably half a dozen times, doing different things on the stones and that kind of thing, and some of the sharpenings were just for me carrying it, some was experimental stuff. But I really do enjoy the ZDP 189 Endura. Funny thing with this, it seemed as if I wasn't seeing the same edge retention out of this that I saw in past ZDP models. Now, I kept blowing it off, just thinking to myself, well, you're blowing it in the sharpening. I mean, you're doing something wrong, and you're challenging the edge retention of the steel. And I don't mean that I wasn't seeing a hair whittling edge last a very long time. In fact, I mean, that's something I tend to see with high carbide steels. Seems like with ZDP, XHP, steels like that, I don't see that as much, or at least I haven't yet. But with this, it seemed like regular edge holding, hair shaving edge holding, wasn't lasting as long. And like I said, I in my mind, I just kept blaming myself. I was still enjoying carrying the model, sharpening the model, polishing the edge, carrying it that way. That was fine. But I had a conversation with somebody about ZDP 189 and Spyderco, and they said they had heard a rumor that there was values coming out very low. That you know, and the ZDP from Spyderco used to be Rockwell at 65. This person was saying they had heard somebody say that it was a new model they had picked up was Rockwell at like 62, 63, which sounded crazy. But if that's the case, if that's what Spyderco was doing, then that would explain why I was seeing a deficit in performance. But it was a rumor. I wasn't sure. Recently, Frankie Blades on Blade Forums did some testing. He did Rockwell testing of different steels, and one of the steels he tested was a Spyderco and ZDP. The value he got was 63.5 to 64. So that's a bit of a step down from 65. I mean, you've got to keep in mind, the Rockwell C scale is not a linear scale. So the difference between 64 and 65 is not the same as the difference between 58 and 59. The higher you go on the scale, the more extreme the difference is between two given points. Spyderco and all of the companies, all of the knife companies right now, the production companies, and the hardnesses that they're taking the steels to is a matter of huge debate. In looking at something like this Endura, and I don't know what this is Rockwell at. I could send this out and have it Rockwell. I haven't bothered yet. Really, I've just been carrying and using the knife and enjoying it. But if this is at a lower value than, say, 65, I mean, what I don't understand is with a company like Spyderco, who's known for steels and who's known for good heat treat and good edge geometry and blade geometry and all that, making functional tools for a part of the knife community that doesn't just want the same old thing, you know, that's performance oriented and ergonomics oriented and steel oriented and sharpening oriented. I don't understand and why they're not pushing the limits more. And if you say, okay, well, you know, a lot of guys are going to buy them, and you've got people all over the internet doing crazy stuff like buying knives in S110V and jamming them in the drywall, and then the knife breaks and they don't understand what went wrong. To guys like me, to guys like Big Brown Bear, other guys in the knife community who have an understanding of the steels, to do something like that is crazy. So if Spyderco looks at the they see that, they see the person complaining, and they look at the situation and they say, this is silly. People are doing things with these knives that they shouldn't be. So they start walking down the Rockwell values. What I don't understand is if you need to do that for the general population, why don't you make a line of knives within your production line that's not for the general population? Do something like a gold class of knives where you take the Rockwell values and you push them way up. I mean, looking at something like Rockstead knives, which are very, very, very expensive mid-tech knives, and one of the steels they use is ZDP, and they take the Rockwell way up, and that's one of the aspects that's talked about. Now, I've never had a Rockstead knife, but it's also my understanding that the knives are executed perfectly, which they should be. I mean, what you're talking about in some cases is $1,200 knives, so it better be perfect. But they take that Rockwell up. I think in the case of their ZDP, it's 67 or 68. Spyderco could do that. Spyderco could do that on an Endura. Make it a select class of their Enduras, you know, some kind of a sprint run or something like that, but put it out and just see what happens. I don't understand why that's not happening. I don't understand why nobody's thought of that yet. There's a lot of people in the knife community who would be really interested in that. At any rate, I am enjoying this model. we'll see if, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's Rockwell at 65, the same as they always have been, and there's just fatigue steel on the edge, or maybe I just haven't been doing as good sharpening the knife. All these things could be possible. I'm not sure that the Rockwell is off on this, but for the knife companies that are going that route, and I mean, it's not just Spyderco, you're hearing about it with several different companies. There's a lot of push in the knife community for things to change. If we're going to be bothering to buy steels that have the potential to perform well above average, if they're heat treated properly, if we're going to pay the money for the steels, hoping for that performance, they need to be heat treated in a way that gives that performance. As far as these two knives are concerned, I know that I saw the performance of V-Toku2, the edge holding, really not do what I was hoping it would do. Doesn't mean it's a bad steel. I mean, it's not. It sharpens better than, say, 1095. It is going to be high toughness. It's not going to be corrosion resistant at all, but fine, so be it. I thought, given that both of these had come out in Enduras and I had them, it might be interesting to do a test between them and just see what I found the difference to be. I was thinking Supergold would have higher edge retention than V-Toku2. There really wasn't any doubt in my mind, but I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and test it and just see where we land. Both knives were sharpened at 30 inclusive, and both knives were hair whittling sharp. The thickness behind the edge was very close to the same for the two knives. The test was push cutting cardboard using 1 inch of blade. The stopping point was where the knife would no longer shave hair. At the end of the test, V-Toku2 stopped shaving hair after 349.5 inches. The 0.5 inches comes from the fact that I measure the pieces of cardboard, and that's how I get the values. One of the, or several of the pieces of cardboard I was using was 10.5 inches. You measure them, you do a number of cuts. At the end, the math comes out the way that it does. I'm not cutting things in half-inch sections. So 349.5 inches stop shaving hair. Supergold cut 687.5 inches of cardboard before it would stop shaving hair. And this is the same cardboard. So take a single piece of cardboard, make a cut with Supergold, make a cut with V-Toku2, make a cut with Supergold, make a cut with V-Toku2. And all the cardboard came from the same box. So it was kept in this, none of it was damaged, none of it was dirty. And the knives were cutting sections an inch away from one another. So it was very equal treatment over the two blades. The difference in performance, I mean, 349 to 687 it's very close to twice the edge retention. And keep in mind, this is hair shaving sharpness. So it's not working edge. And I mean, you start going down the road with that, and that's a different story. As far as working edge goes, I'm not sure how these would stack up. I think that Supergold would still do very good, but I'm not 100% on. I think it would probably outlast V-Toku2, but I'm not sure. I really, really wanted to get Supergold back in my pocket. In fact, it was hard for me to get this review and test done, and I really had Supergold set aside, not carrying it, even though I have a second Endura in Supergold. I mean, I'm kind of planning on putting that away, and when this one is all used up, I'll pull that other one out and carry it. So I was waiting to get this back in the pocket before I could get to all this, and it was really driving me crazy. I really put a lot of use on this knife in Endura ZDP because of that. After the test, I wanted to resharpen the knife. I want to get it back in my pocket. I want to get carry time with it. I started in on, in using this, I'm doing mirror polished edges I did for the test as well. The sharpening for the test was all water stones. I didn't think that there would be a problem using aluminum-based abrasives on Supergold. I wanted to see, but I didn't think that there would be a problem, and there didn't seem to be a problem. Now, at this point, it's kind of a funny thing, because with all the diamond water stones coming out, you kind of have to question, do I need to use alumina stones to get a mirror polished edge on something? And you really don't. I mean, you really have the option of dealing with companies like Practical Sharpening or Gritomatic, Veneve to get a high polish on something with higher carbide content. So then you got to ask, where do these fit in? There's guys who just prefer them. Okay, fine. But I mean, it's a question I'm asking myself. In the case of these knives, nothing that I've seen is going to contend with a 20K Suhiro as far as the level of polish. You can take it up on the diamond stones and then add this in at the end. And that kind of thing, that kind of idea is where things start to get interesting. I've reviewed the stones from Practical Sharpening and the stones from Veneve, and they perform great using them as sets, using them as a single product. I think it's going to be interesting when things start getting mixed in with other stones. The only other reason in my mind to stick to something like aluminum water stones is because they don't wear the steel quickly. You're not going to eat up the edge using those stones. So it seems to almost last longer. Now, I'm not sure that diamond water stones are going to eat up an edge the way a diamond plates will. Diamond plates just chew through stuff. You lose a lot of steel with those, probably because the abrasive sits on the surface of the stone as opposed to being embedded within the stone the way it is with an aluminum-based stone or even a diamond water stone. But still, using the aluminum stones seems as if it gives more life to the knife. You don't work your way into the primary grind as quickly, so the bevel stays nice and tight, smaller, longer. That, and I mean, I'm still feeling out Supergold to see exactly how I want to handle it. I wanted to put it back in the pocket with a high polished edge. I tested it with a mirror polished edge, but I hadn't EDC'd it that way. So starting in on the sharpening on a 500 grit Shapton, worked with that, cleaned up the bevel, apexed it, burr formation both sides, moved on to a 2000 grit Shapton. I worked with that. There's no problem. After the 2000 grit, I moved on to a 6000 grit Nubatama. I worked with that. Polish started to come up. Sharpness definitely came up. After that, I moved on to a 10,000 grit Suhiro. I worked with that. And after that, I moved on to a 20,000 grit Suhiro. After the 20K Suhiro, I moved on to a 1 micron diamond strop, poly diamond emulsion. And after the 1 micron strop, I jumped straight to a 0.1 micron strop. That 1 to 0.1 is a jump that I've been making a lot lately. There are people who might argue that that's too big of a jump in strops, but it doesn't seem to be. The polish of the edge definitely comes up, and the sharpness seems to come up as far as the way that the knife will whittle hairs. You can throw in more strops if you want. I'm just kind of minimizing it just to save time. It definitely doesn't hurt to have a 1/4 micron strop in there, but 1 to 0.1, as long as you're using really strong abrasives. And what I'm using is poly diamond emulsions from Ken Schwartz. So they're extremely high quality and very effective. It doesn't seem to be an issue. The edge came up very well on the knife. It was hair whittling sharp. I really don't have any complaints. I really enjoy the way that Enduras sharpen. Something about them, just, it's one of the preferred blade shapes as far as I'm concerned. One that I really enjoy working with. So, interesting interesting sprint runs, exclusives. I think that Spyderco did a good job with them. I'm really looking forward to carrying the Supergold more. And that and ZDP. And I mean, I'll still get in time with V-Toku2. It's just the way that that high level of sharpness drops off. Yeah, it was kind of a disappointment. And I mean, I'm not the first one to say it. It came out and a lot of us ran out and got it. A few of us anyway, people that I know. And we all kind of came to the same conclusion very quickly. And in fact, I mean, I've seen other sharpeners, professional sharpeners, since get the knives and kind of run into the same thing. Rough Rooster Sharpening the other day put up a post on Instagram where he had gotten his hands on V-Toku2 and sharpened it, and I mean, he came right out and noted how it didn't seem to hold a very high level of sharpness for very long. It's an interesting steel, and I mean, that's exactly what he said too. And it is, to a sharpener, V-Toku2 is really interesting. The way that it takes an edge, I mean, it's something that's worth trying out, but I don't think it's going to win you any edge retention contests. Supergold, interesting steel. I like the way that it sharpens. The edge takes a lot of bite, and I like that aspect of it. It's not going to be knocking down the super steels as far as edge retention goes, but it's kind of like super blue. I mean, why bother with super blue when you've got steels like S90V and S110V and other steels that will outperform it? Well, the reason is because it's fun. For a sharpener, it's an interesting steel. You don't always have to have the top performance on a steel. You just need to enjoy what you're doing. I mean, that's the point of the hobby. So I'm enjoying Supergold. I think that the Spyderco did a good job executing the model, and I'm looking forward to getting more carry time with it.